openness of our impoverished colleges and universities to new subjects and courses of study is linked to reliance on real or imagined market forces and the absence of a central administrative body that certifies such creative and entrepreneurial endeavors. That's paraphrased from Troe in that last particular item on your bibliography. And again, this simply goes back to trying to be everything to everybody. Credits. Course credit is like academic currency. You take a course, you earn credit for that course. And then you can use that course, use that credit to buy other things like degrees on down the road. Course credit may be accumulated, it may be banked, it may be transferred within limits. It can be automatically accepted, or it could be like automatically rejected by another institution. But nevertheless, it's there, and you can wheel and deal with it when you want to move to another institution. Well, either you take all of these credits, or I'm not going to come. And in a bad market, you'll get in. In a good market, they'll say, see ya. But it's usable. It also permits, and I wish we'd never done this 10-year rule thing, it also permits drop out, stop out, and return. I'll go to the school get my credits. I'll drop out. I'll work for a year, 5 years. I'll come back. I'll get some more credits. I'll go out. I'll work for a year, 20 years. I'll come back. Used to be able to do that when I was first here. We'd have people that took 30 years to get a doctoral degree. And all those courses that they took were still good. And then some bean counters came in and said, no, you can't graduate with courses that are older than 10 years still on your degree plan. And some of you are going to bump up against that requirement, and some of you are already bumped up against that requirement. So I view that as a bad thing. Knowledge of a discipline may change, but the knowledge that you had to accumulate, the effort that you had to accumulate, all to me still is an indication that you've either got the goods or you don't have the goods. All of this leads to, with that 10-year caveat, something that I call the vaccination theory of education. English is not history, and history is not science. And science is not art, and art is not music. And English, history, science, and art and music are subjects. And a subject is something you take, and when you have taken it, you have had it. And if you have had it, you are immune and need not take it again. And I think if you've ever gone through planning out a degree plan, you know exactly what this is referring to. Have you had Higher Ed 627? No. Well, then you need to take it. Here, sign up for Ogden and take the course. If not, we'll move on and get something new for you to take. Easing on down the road toward the blessed end, we hope. 1963 to 19. Introduction. Social criticism continues. Social criticism escalates. There's violence on the streets, violence on campuses. Vietnam involvement increases. More government involvement in education. The Times, and I guess those are cave people. We have reverted. Going to talk about government and society. Going to talk about the Coleman Report. or finally, I believe, we're going to talk about Jenks, Jensen, and the Heartthrob authors. Government and Society. Johnson enacts many of Kennedy's programs and then moves on to what he calls the Great Society. There's increased violence. There's the beginnings of dissatisfaction with post-Sputnik reform. We're going to talk about all of those things in turn. Johnson programs. Johnson's first program to impact education was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Might not sound as if it's education relevant off the top, but in it, he created a group of people which were called the economically disadvantaged. That was shortened to disadvantaged. And there was supposed to be no discrimination in federal programs against anyone who was considered to be economically disadvantaged, or no discrimination in those programs that accept programs and entities that accepted federal money. We'll talk a little later about the economically disadvantaged. The Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 begins Johnson's war on poverty. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 creates a series of title programs, Title I, Title II, Title III. They were categorical grants aimed at the disadvantaged. And when I say categorical, I mean you couldn't apply for them, or you couldn't hope to be funded, unless they were directly aimed at one or more of those economically disadvantaged groups. Hence the term categorical. In order to qualify, you had to be addressing one of the disadvantaged groups. So, who are they? And Alonso Sosa used to teach here in elementary education. Alonso was Hispanic and spoke 2 languages and thought that being bilingual was an advantage rather than being a disadvantage. Not so. The federal government decreed that folks who were bilingual were a disadvantaged group, as were Native Americans. I use the phrase black. Nowadays, it's probably more politically correct to say African Americans. I've asked black people if it's okay for me to say this since I was born so long ago, and they say, "Hey, Bill, that's okay." So I am continuing to do that. Low-income persons, and when this was passed, I thought perhaps as a student I could qualify, but unfortunately all my hopes were dashed because this was for inner city poor and migrant worker poor. I thought again when I moved from New York to Wisconsin that perhaps I could qualify as a migrant, but that didn't happen early. Or that didn't happen either. Handicapped and, gasp, choke. A lot of congresspersons, representatives, and senators did not want this bill to pass. And so in their meetings, how can we diddle with this law to be sure that it's not passed? One unnamed Southern senator had an idea. And he said, hey, if we include this group, nobody is going to vote for this. So they were included. and that's women. And probably women are the group that made out the best in this whole thing. When you started applying for categorical grants, you had to have in your community a large portion of one or more of those particular groups. Women have probably made out the best from their designation as disadvantaged, made out the best of all the groups.